Hello, hello, whole nine yards. So I just want to give it a moment. You'll be listening to the comments by Sherry, Ivan, and sorry, it's getting late. What's his name? Mark Dussault. And I just want to sort of give a little bit of rundown, my own comments and my own sense of their comments. So first of all, in terms of what you're going to hear from Sherry and Mark, I think you'll be very, very pleased. They're very excited about your idea. They did give you both a sense of what the potential might be, as well as directions you might go in, and I think your idea was very strong and exciting. For myself, I liked the specificity of it, this 5 to 10% in the arts. I think that it was very. What you'll hear when they're talking is that Sherry specifically mentions how alive your presentation felt. So through this document, that sort of vibrancy that really seemed to be happening on your team came through and was communicated, and it made a difference in the presentation. After the cameras went off, unfortunately, I didn't catch it, but we had a great conversation about bringing art to Viatech, bringing theater to Viatech, the big technology center in Victoria. So kudos to you for that. I think in terms of development, what you'll see when you watch their feedback is that there was some ambiguity around what exactly you meant. So, for example, Ivan immediately jumped to the idea of that this had to be some kind of theater performance, and how do you do it in this bite-sized sampler, where Sherry was more thinking, well, maybe it could just be an installation art piece that provokes the spirit of the theater. And so I think that's an area for development. In terms of my own sense of potential, I'd really recommend you look at another very strong recommendation was from Kevin, Nadia, and Mike around a whole city vision, and it seems like yours are close relatives. So in terms of process, I don't have very much feedback for you in terms of process, because you were great. Really, you were in a way the archetypal dream team that one would hope for, but never expect that I would hope for, but never expect when I designed the class. You embraced the model. You really, and that doesn't mean you necessarily agreed with every aspect of it, but you gave it a good shot. And there's sort of a formula for innovation, that it's a function of creativity, critical thinking, knowledge, and if you imagine all of those in parentheses, and all that, all of which are informed by attitude. And I really think you, in every sense, that you had the attitude running through it. You had a real playful spirit while also remaining focused and playful without being. I wanted to say playful without being silly, but it's not that you weren't silly, but you actually were also getting work done. So you were getting work done with a playful spirit. And I think it's interesting. You are the three people in the class who have very positive, creative experiences in your background. Jeff, you wrote in your first post about your experiences designing a conference, and Alicia, of course, you're an artist, and Sal, you had your experience as an entrepreneur, and these are just the experiences that you've written about. So on one hand, it's kind of interesting that you all came together and wonderful, and on the other hand, I sort of wish you were spread out. And so I'll be curious in terms of your analysis when you get to the paper. You are an extreme user group. You are not in the thick part of the bell curve in terms of the kind of business people coming to creative processes. And I'll be looking toward your insights to see what you can offer in terms of how this process, where it really worked, where it could where you might do things differently, and how you would take what you learned forward. So I hope that your experience was a positive one. It certainly seems very vibrant from what you brought to the page. And I'm thinking about, I have one process comment. My only process comment to you would actually be on the criteria, that there's some overlap, that usefulness, you used usefulness as a criterion, but then you also used other things. For example, broadens appeal. Well, broadening the appeal is useful, right? So that as you go forward, just try to tighten those up. Where, yes, you want to be measuring usefulness and novelty, but if you're using other criteria, which are more precise ways of saying that, then you don't need to also put in usefulness, right? So, great work, team. Look forward to your papers, and I'll see you online. One more comment. I just put the video back on for one more comment. Sal, I don't want you to think I am always picking on you, but I can't help think about that image you started with of the tied hands. And I'd be very curious about your reflections. In terms of my hope with CPS, and the reason I chose it for this class was that because it is such a close cousin to standard analytical business process. And that while you may have gone the whole 9 yards in this team in terms of applying divergent thinking, the hope would be that you can actually, in more subtle and incremental ways, apply divergence in your daily work life, or insert it in your processes of meetings or with others. And I'd be curious about whether you see any opportunity for that, given the constraint you've expressed about your workplace. All right, I'll now hand you over to the panel to hear their feedback.
Just commenting on the concept of kind of tasters or taste testings at various locations or in locations other than at Belfry. I think is a very interesting concept. I think there are a host of logistical and business problems that would have to be dealt with in terms of how we would do that, the kinds of resources that would have to be poured into it. But as a concept, it's an interesting one. I'd like to see, taking aside just the pure logistical issues of dealing with that in terms of both physical and human resources, in terms of dealing with the kinds of issues that we would have to deal with with respect to our professional associations in terms of performers and designers and that kind of. It's a concept that's engaging, at least, and so while I can't get my head around the logistics, I like the idea as a concept. I'm not sure how I would kind of make it go. So that's my overall concept.
Actually, that's the same response that I have, Ivan. I find this actually very exciting. And I find this particular proposal very alive. There's a sense of, which is exciting. And I think of this having almost an installation at a technology center. That's very exciting. And my gut response to this, so I'm not doing any analysis or whatever, here is that we should just try this to see what happens. And then then we have to answer the questions, okay, well, how do we try this? I mean, yeah, that's a very, it's expensive and it's a very complex thing, but there's some real bringing the art alive in other environments. And I think there is a major technology center in Victoria, which we feel quite separate from, and I do a lot of work with tech people and know that that's an incredibly creative environment. And I think that there is real potential for marriage there. And this is kind of an interesting way this is really interesting to me.
But I want to bring it to you, but this proposal really reminds me, Ivan, of something that you said in our first interview, which is that people, they see even bad art in a bank, but they don't see theater, and that's sort of, it's not in their daily lives, and this sort of addresses that issue, or starts to.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that I don't want to focus too much on the problem, but the issue with theater is that it requires an active engagement and an active buy-in, and it requires time. So bad art in a bank comes and goes. Bad theater stays for a long time, unfortunately. But that's the nature of the beast, is that it's something that is designed and has been created in order to be with you over an extended period of time. So I'll give you an example from one of my numerous past lives. So I was a manager for a company that focused on theater for young audiences, which are generally very, very short scripts. They go into schools and perform in schools. So the script lengths are usually 30 to 40 minutes. So they're compact, they're tightly knit little productions that kind of do the beginning, middle, and end part in a very condensed kind of way. In order to sell those shows on a national touring basis, we did a number of showcase presentations. And those showcase presentations were to people who bought these shows on an annualized basis, had been working in the business for 20 years. The showcases were designed so that you weren't allowed to perform the entire production. You were allowed anywhere from a 5 to 10 minute excerpt. And we would have people who had been in the business for 20 years who would go, I don't get how that show ends. Well, that's because you didn't see the show, you moron. So
it's the trailer.
so doing that to even less experienced audiences is a really high risk venture. So while I'm kind of intrigued by the concept, that's the kind of logistics I'm speaking of. Like, how do you? It's designing a TV commercial and designing it in a format that's presented in something that's more engaging than a TV commercial. So trying to design it so you're doing it live.
Right.
And let's just conceive of the process that's involved in a TV commercial and the resources that are involved. To do a 30-second spot usually takes in excess of, well, depending on what country you're in, anywhere from $250 to over $3-4 million to do 30 seconds of messaging in that kind of format. Some of those costs are the time and effort involved in actually condensing the message down. It's not just about production. Yeah. So how we would re-script a show like Red, which is about to start performing tonight. You can't do that. Is a difficult concept to get around, but the idea of a real kind of taster is interesting. I need that to be developed in a format that works for a lot of performing arts.
And I guess what excited me, because I wasn't even thinking about the actual short performances. I was thinking of in the earlier paragraph, what I sort of visualized as art installations based on the play. So this was things done by set design or whatever, but having something three-dimensional and present in a workspace or in a public space. That sounds exciting.
I don't think I can add anything more to this. I did like the CBGB reference.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Is going to help them do their jobs better.
Oh yeah.
This is about getting those people that are the people that work there, the people that are part of that community. It's not just the people that you sell technology to, it's the people who are creating technology who, it's like, they need to be here.
Yeah.
How do we get that So having, I love the idea of an installation in their work environment where theater is, it's not a thing on a poster. If they haven't been here, that's all it is so far.
So
I was going to stand up and breathe.